Bill Carroll, Zenny62 Media, and I'm working my way through my watch list, putting together the players that I'll be studying, and I'm focusing primarily on players that you may not have heard as much about. So these are players that I think will go most likely in the fourth through seventh and even undrafted free agent rounds, or undrafted free agency. I'm going to start with a lot of these players are going to be somewhat undersized, but I'm going to start with one that's not. Devin Gibbs at Lamar University is a full-size tight end, which makes him stand out. Redshirted as a freshman back in 2022. Then 2020. Then COVID was the 2021 COVID year. So he had a return kick for 2 yards, and that was it in the 3 games in which he appeared. Then he's given credit for another redshirt freshman season in 2022, and he finally got to really play in 10 games. He had 4 starts, 19 catches, 191 yards, a couple of touchdowns. In his best game versus Northwestern, not the one up south, but the one up north, but the one down south, he had 55 yards in reception, and had 4 receptions for 35 catches and a touchdown versus HCU, which is Houston Christian. And then in 2023, his redshirt sophomore year, which is kind of like it's almost like a redshirt. Whatever. Because of the COVID year, you got an extra year. But in 10 games, was 5th on the team in catches, had 14 catches for 170 yards, and once again 2 touchdowns. His best game was 68 yards and receptions and a touchdown versus Nicholls State. He had a couple of catches and 27 yards, another score versus McNeese. And then last year, he really solidified that he's one of the best, potentially one of the better FCS tight end prospects. Now, because once again, size, he's legitimately 6'5", and he might be about 241 pounds. He looks almost slender, but because of his height and length, he can carry more weight, obviously. But in 11 games and 10 starts last year, 17 catches, 163 yards, 4 touchdowns, and frankly, could have been used more. His best game was against East Texas A&M, where he had 4 catches and a touchdown for 39 yards, 25 yards in receptions and a touchdown versus Nicholls State. He likes Nicholls State. And 51 yards of receptions versus one of the better teams in the Southland Conference, Incarnate Word. So I think he might have a very big year this year. Just comes down to how much he gets utilized. Another player that I've really focused on, and this is a player that's transferred up, is Jyron Johnson. Had a very fine career before he gets to Bowling Green and has a chance to step in for Harold Fannin, who was just drafted. In 34 career games at Texas Southern in SWAC, he had 104 career catches for 1,224 career yards, 7 touchdown receptions, and was second team All-Conference back in 2021 with his best year in 32 catches, 467 yards, and 3 scores. I think that he already has his degree from Texas Southern University. Clearly is a team that understands. Bowling Green understands how to use tight ends. He has a real chance to bust out. It should be pointed out he has a little bit of competition back there because a underclassman who's transferred from Florida is Arliss Boardingham, and he is a junior, a California kid, Van Nuys, California, found his way to Florida, played a little bit, was on the academic honor roll, so a solid student. In his time there, he had 44 catches, 447 yards, and 6 touchdown receptions in his Florida career. Wasn't an all-freshman player for the conference with 26 receptions and 289 yards and 4 touchdowns in his previous time. I think one of those 2 players was going to have a monster year. Comes down to who I guess gets the most snaps, quite frankly. But I like both players. Now of the other, and of course, Boardingham is another player who's he's generously listed about 6'3". He's probably 6'1" and 7/8, but probably legitimately about 244 pounds. And then another player who's a little bit on the shorter side, for a tight end at least, but a really good football player is Logan Compton. He is listed, well actually he's not short. Oh, sorry. He's listed at 6'4", he's probably 6'3.5". Probably about 242 pounds. Has had a really nice build to his career. Didn't play a lot. Well, he started his career at Houston, right after New Mexico Military Academy, and played a little bit as a sophomore, 140 snaps. His sophomore year, mostly on special teams. Did have a kick return for 1 yard versus Temple. And then last year, 13 offensive snaps, mostly on special teams. His breakout year at Incarnate Word last year, he had 18 catches for 219 yards, 4 touchdown receptions, and is a good blocker, right? It should be mentioned that some of these guys are sort of, basically big-bodied wide receivers who, go into coverage. I want to mention also another guy who's a solid blocker, but on the smaller sides, Coleman Kurtz and Aiden Quinn. I'll talk about both of them actually. Kurtz transferred from Sacramento State and now has found his way to South Dakota State, which obviously is an absolute powerhouse program. And obviously they care about blocking. I don't think that's really news to anybody that's ever watched them play football. I think he has a legitimate chance to make an impact in both, right? Both as a receiver and, like I said, in the game, as in the blocking game. Things that you like about him. Like I said, he's a smaller guy, probably 6'1"-ish. Might be a little under 6 feet tall, which means he might be thought of as a fullback conversion. But had 20 receptions last year for 236 yards. The year previous, 25 catches for 191 yards. And in just 9 games last year, he had 2 touchdown receptions. I could see him ooching those numbers up to somewhere close to 400 yards receiving if he becomes the primary tight end at SDSU. And could have, 3 or 4 touchdown receptions. And I think another player that is going to be, once again, on a smaller size, but is a decent blocker, is the Aiden Quinn, who, of course, plays for the Salukis of Southern Illinois, Carbondale. And a player that, when I first spotted him his junior year, had 13 starts. Took over the job, had 27 receptions for 348 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had a big game versus Southeast Missouri, 6 catches for 85 yards. He has some run after catch. A lot of these guys are sort of, guys that create separation essentially by walling off or warding off defenders and going over them. Because of his lack of height, Quinn can't do that. He may be 6 foot, somewhere between 6'1" and a half, and maybe 6'1", but probably a little less. But can run routes, has good burst, comes out of it with good speed. Not a blazer, probably a guy who runs in the mid to high 4.7s in a 40, but he's a guy that, like I said, has good burst. Probably has about a 33.5-inch vertical, based on what I've watched. Last year, like I said, really showed you something. And then, of course, in his redshirt junior season, he did miss 8 games due to injury, but had 3 catches and 12 yards and ended up redshirting last year. So I think he's going to come back with a vengeance this year, and I think he's been one of the top receiving tight ends in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is a really good conference, and should be one of the better ones in college football. Some of the underrated FBS players that I like at the tight end position include Wyoming's John Michael Gyllenborg, which, I know he sounds like a Swedish soap opera actor, but last year, in just 9 games, battled injury, wasn't able to play maybe as much as you would have liked, was in more games the year prior, appeared in 13 games in 2023 with 4 starts, but had 23 catches. Once again, not a full-time starter, and 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. In this past season, like I said, battling some injuries, still was second on the team, right, in terms of receiving. 30 receptions in just 9 games, and was second in receiving yards at 425 yards. This is a really productive player. Once again, despite injury, he was a guy that made academic all-conference in the Mountain West. And I don't know if there was a better tight end returning in the Mountain West Conference. Some of the things that I also noted, a decent blocker, maybe not a killer, but a decent blocker, and came up in big games, right? When they knocked off Washington State, he had the game-winning touchdown. Had a huge game versus Boise State, right? His 137 yards, against San Jose State, not Boise State. But it was a huge game. And I truly believe that he could be a guy that's over 500 yards receiving as a tight end this year, if he stays healthy. Could easily have 6 touchdown receptions. I just think he has a legitimate chance to be drafted, especially since he has a good frame on him. Once again, not one of the undersized guys. He's legitimately, probably 6'4" and change, probably about 247 pounds. And I mentioned Boise briefly, though by error, but their Matt Lauter is another guy who I think has a legitimate chance to be drafted. San Diego, California kid from Torrey Pines, listed 6'3", probably legitimately 6'2" and a quarter, maybe 6'2" and 3/8, probably about 237 to 241 pounds. But another solid student, right? Academic, three-time academic All Mountain West. He was first team Mountain West last year, in my mind, really due to injury to Gyllenborg, but had 381. Had 7 receiving touchdowns, which is a massive number. 619 receiving yards. I mean, one of the most productive tight ends in college football, if you sort of discount Harold Fannin, whose numbers are insanity, but just good across the board. 47 catches. And once again, a decent blocker. 14 games last year because of the championship game and everything. And like I said, 7 touchdowns, led the team. Has the Boise State record for receptions by a tight end, and is second in terms of single season yards. One of only 2 of all the players on the team who had at least a catch in all 14 games, and had 91 yards receiving and 7 receptions against Portland State. I think that he and Gyllenborg are going to battle it out, but I could see both those guys end up being drafted. And like I said, I'm sort of just talking about guys that are going to go day 3 to undrafted free agent. There are some other tight ends, and this is sort of part 1, I guess you could say, of my tight end discussion, because I'm just concentrating on the quote-unquote sleepers. I'll talk about the top guys, or middle guys, and the top guys later. But once again, Bill Carroll from Zenny62 Media, walking my way through my watch list for the upcoming 2026 NFL Draft, and I will see you again with another video tomorrow.